Welcome once again to our discussion of the church. What is it and what are we supposed to be doing? I'm so glad you're joining me. You know, for more than 1,000 years, the church in the West has lived within a cultural configuration that we call Christendom. In a very, very general way, in this arrangement, it was assumed that the culture is vaguely Christian, and that by virtue of being born in this culture, you're a Christian. Even if you don't really have any particular connection to the church, you're part of this culture, so then you must be Christian. The church in this arrangement is supposed to support the culture, support the government, and raise up the children to be good citizens. In fact, for some people, that's the church's primary job, to take kids and make them good public citizens. The government more or less leaves the church alone, although there's a public claim that the government somehow protects the church, although that is not a thing that Jesus ever suggested the church should have. I'm deeply troubled these days when I hear some kinds of Christians say, oh, we're being persecuted in this culture, and they try to use power, political power, the power of government to protect Christians. The basic assumption that runs from the first page to the last of the New Testament is that Christians are always a persecuted minority. And the thing to do in response to persecution in the New Testament is not to get power to weigh in like a bully and stop people from persecuting by threatening them or taking some kind of action against them. Remember, Jesus said, pray for those who persecute you. Evangelize, let them hear the good news. Love them, your persecutors. Love them, care for them, extend help to them. In this arrangement that we call Christendom, the church is generally expected to bless whatever the political and public authorities decide they're going to do, to stand by and bless whatever countries decide to do, even though these projects hatched up by governments and hatched up by countries have little or nothing to do with Jesus, have really nothing in common with Jesus' cause and with Jesus' ways. That expectation was there for a long, long time, more than 1,000 years in Western culture. The church is sort of the chaplain for Western society in this arrangement and is supposed to pray for and bless, but not challenge or resist. The culture of Christendom, this culture of Christendom, began its long, slow death with the rise of the Enlightenment in the 1600s, and it's taken several centuries. But now, in our day, Christendom really is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. The government and the culture at large cares not at all about the church or the church's concerns. Our culture at large, and the government in particular, cares nothing about what might be a Christian approach to a difficulty or a problem or an international set of circumstances. Our culture is not Christian at all in any respect. Our culture is secular, and I mean that in three senses. Number one, our culture, our society is secular in that our public institutions are not informed or shaped at all by Christian practices or by Christian ways of thinking and being. Our public institutions are not suffused with God and with Christian language about God. Number 2, our society is not Christian in that the majority of persons in our culture now are not Christians. The majority of people in our culture are not connected to a church, and indeed, the fastest growing demographic in our society is those people who say they believe nothing and they have no connection to any kind of religious community. So that it's not just that they're not Christian, they don't do anything that's identifiably religious. Number 3, our society is not Christian at all, it's secular, in that the way people are taught to live in our public life, the way people are taught to think and to feel, to act, the way we're taught to imagine ourselves and to imagine the world, assumes that God is not there, or at the very least, that God does not matter. And that means then that the conditions of belief, the conditions of faith have changed, and it's generally assumed that if you're a smart and well-informed person, you will not believe anything about God. You will not live by faith. So really the default position for our society is unbelief, non-faith. The church must learn again to be the church against the world, against our culture, against our society, against the ways of thinking, feeling, imagining that are all around us. We have to work against the way our society, and it's a powerful force that comes at us through television and movies, through the way sports happen, through the way education happens, through the way our casual conversation takes place. Against all of this powerful force, the church must undo this way of thinking and this way of talking and this way of imagining, and the church must replace it with the very different ways of thinking, imagining, and language that go with Jesus. We have to be different in the form of Jesus and Him crucified. Sisters and brothers in Christ, that is no small task. But without the church, it won't happen at all. Thank you for being with us. Please join me again next Wednesday as we continue our discussion.